welcome to Bad Food Science. So today we're going to start out very simply. We're going to be talking about making a grilled cheese sandwich. So disclaimer, I am not actually a food scientist. I've never actually taken any courses in food science or nutrition at all. So take anything I say with a grain of salt. So I thought for the first video we'd start out really simple. We're going to make a grilled cheese sandwich because who doesn't like grilled cheese unless you're, gluten intolerant or celiac, lactose intolerant. All right, now let's get to the science part of this. So there's two things that happen when you start to melt cheese. When you're actually making your grilled cheese, you put everything together, it's on the pan. Two things actually happen. So first, at about 90 degrees Fahrenheit, the solid milk fat in the cheese, it begins to liquefy. So the cheese begins to soften, the fat kind of comes out and beads up on the top of the cheese. That's like that grease that you see, it kind of looks like water on it. That's all of the fat. So as the cheese gets hotter, all of the proteins within the cheese start to break down, which makes it collapse, and that's why it kind of like gets all gooey and melty. Now, temperature is not the only thing that affects the consistency of the melt in the cheese. Something else that affects it is actually the moisture content. So the harder the cheese, the less gooey and delicious it will be when you've melted it. That's why when you put Parmesan cheese shredded on top of like your spaghetti, it doesn't kind of like go stringy very quickly. One, it's not hot enough usually, and two, the moisture content is really, really low. So then that's also why in things like if you melt cream cheese, it becomes almost like you could whip it, kind of like a whipped cream almost, more than like a goo. It doesn't melt the same way. So for this grilled cheese, the one that we are going to use today is going to be an aged cheddar. This one we want to heat to about 150 degrees Fahrenheit for the ultimate meltiness, gooiness, and it makes the best grilled cheese. Of course, there are other factors that are involved. It's not just moisture and it's not just temperature. The amount of fat within a cheese also affects how it melts, but this is bad food science, so we're not going to get really too deep into all of that kind of stuff. All right, so some things to note before we start that will make the ultimate grilled cheese the best scientific way of making a grilled cheese. You're going to want to bring your cheese to room temperature. This will give you a head start in getting it to that 150 degree Fahrenheit mark, and then you'll have a better chance of it melting the way that you want, the way you see on like commercials and things like that, and less likely of a chance of burning your bread in the process of getting there. Another reason that we want to bring it to room temperature and we don't want to just start cooking right from a cold cheese is that if there's too much of a sudden increase in temperature, it could cause the proteins to kind of like coagulate too quickly. And that's going to give you some clumps and a very greasy texture. So that's why sometimes when you get grilled cheese sandwiches, they're like just dripping in grease and you get lumps of unmelted cheese. This is most likely the reason why, because I think most people tend to use a mild or aged cheddar, so that's not typically the problem. Something else that you can do, but we are not going to do today, is you can grate the cheese. This will allow for more of an even distribution of the cheese so that you don't have to worry about that. Another way to help move this process along is to start at a relatively low temperature. Again, the same idea, you don't want to just all of a sudden have a dramatic change in temperature for the cheese because you want the proteins to break down at a slower rate, which will allow for the ultimate melt and less grease in the cooking process. So there's a lot more science behind melting cheese, exactly what happens, what goes into it, things that you can do, what you can avoid. But most of that is not going to apply for making grilled cheese. So a lot of this will be for making like a fondue or a cheese sauce, things like that. So like adding an acid, that will help with the binding process. So like binding the calcium so that it's not lumpy. So adding like some white wine or lemon juice. Adding a starch like cornstarch or flour to it, that'll also help. Not stirring too much. Don't let it cool before you're serving it, which I don't think anybody's ever let a grilled cheese cool before they've eaten it or given it to whoever they made it for. So I don't think we have to worry about that one too much. One thing to note is if you decide not to use a mild to aged cheddar for this, you decide to go maybe the route of non-real cheese, in the form of orange squares wrapped in plastic. That's fine, but don't use stringy cheese. Like the mozzarella cheese that is delicious on pizza. It's not great in a grilled cheese. It's not going to give you the same consistency, and it's not going to be good in anything like a sauce either. So that's mozzarella is for pizza. Leave it with pizza. We're going to keep it there. We're not going to use it for anything else. Okay, so now that we've gone through the science behind what happens when you melt cheese, the optimal melting point for all different kinds of cheeses, let's get into actually making the grilled cheese. So let's go through the kinds of ingredients that you're actually going to need to start with. So these are the ingredients we're going to use to make our grilled cheese today. I've already cut up some of the cheese. I'm using an old cheddar cheese. So this one is a slightly harder cheese, a little bit of a lower moisture content. So we're going to get that up to about 150 degrees Fahrenheit for our melts. We've got our butter, and we are using a light rye bread. Okay, so now that we've gone through ingredients, we've gone through the science behind it, we're going to get to the crux of this video, the bad science. Now everybody knows how to make a grilled cheese. That's fairly self-explanatory. You make the sandwich, you put it on a frying pan. Remember, keep it at a slightly lower heat. You don't want to startle the cheese into melting because that's not going to give you the optimum melt. You want to let it just kind of melt slowly. So I would say if your dial on your stove goes from low to like 8, I would start around a 4. Oh yeah, look at that sexy melting cheese on that beautiful bread. So what happens if you're a university student living in a dorm? Or say you live in a country that don't really have ovens, like China. It's maybe you don't even have a stove there. Depends on where you live. Let's just say, for this example, that you have no stove. You have no heating element in your vicinity in order to make a grilled cheese. There is no hot plates. There is no stove elements. And there's not even a microwave or a toaster to make very disappointing grilled cheese sandwiches. We are going to use an unconventional heating method in order to make a grilled cheese that you can do anywhere in the world. Literally anywhere, in any room. You don't even have to be in your kitchen if you don't want to. So let's get to it. Moving away from the conventional methods of making grilled cheese, in addition to those original ingredients, we are also going to need some tin foil and an iron. All right, so now let's start with the basics. We've moved our working area over here so that you can actually see what I'm doing. So we have our bread. You only need 2 pieces, obviously, unless you're making a lot more for other people. I've got 5 slices of cheese here because I am a cheese fiend, and I got my butter. Alright, so you're going to want to have about 4 minutes on either side. This side has obviously more tin foil on it, the one with all the folds, so we're going to leave it on for an extra minute and hopefully that will work. When we're done the 5 minutes on this side, we're going to flip it over and we're going to do 4 minutes on the other. And we're going to flip our sandwich over and do the other side. Careful, the tin foil is hot. All right, other side. Okay, so I don't know if you can hear that, but I can hear the butter actually melting.
So let's get a close-up shot of the action here. Maybe not overly exciting from an outsider's perspective. But inside that tinfoil, shit is going down.
Alright, so now that that is finished, we're going to take off the iron and we're going to check out our sandwich. If the one side is not brown enough for you, that is perfectly okay. You can just flip it back over, take off some of the tin foil, just the little flaps, and do it again. The other side should be fine though, so let's see what we have. Oh, not quite brown enough on this side for me. But instead of putting both flaps, we're just going to leave it like this. We're going to put our iron back on for about 2 minutes and we're going to crisp up that bread. Alright, so this has been about 2 minutes. So we're going to take it off. We're going to see what our bread looks like. You can always keep putting it back on if it's not crispy enough for you or not burnt enough for you, however you like it. Oh, I'm stuck to the tin foil. Alright, this is not too bad. We got some golden colors going on here. So there you have it, some bad food science. We have melted our cheese. It's come to about 150 degrees Fahrenheit in order to have the optimal meltiness for aged cheddar cheese. We've got our toasted bread, and you can see on the other side some delightful goldenness. And we did this all without any actual cooking conductors, so there was no hot plates involved, no stoves, just your handy-dandy iron. So we're going to unplug this, we're going to let this cool, and we're going to try the sandwich out. Alright, so we're going to try out our grilled cheese now. You can see from the inside here, it's nice and gooey. We got that nice pull to it. It's still quite warm. I don't know if you can see the steam from the camera point of view, but I can see it. So we're going to give this a try. It tastes like a grilled cheese. That's really good. I mean, if you don't have an oven, a stove, a heating element of any kind, oh, do you see that? Oh, that's nice. If you don't have anything like that, but you have an iron, a lot of people can get one really cheaply. A lot of people just kind of happen to have one. You even get these, and most hotels even have irons in them. So you can make a grilled cheese on the go if you're traveling. And I gotta say, this tastes pretty much exactly like it would taste in a frying pan. Alright, so what did we learn today? We learned that as long as you have a heating element of some kind that will get to about 150 degrees Fahrenheit, you will be able to make a grilled cheese sandwich. I mean, obviously you need the bread and the butter and a knife and tin foil, some cheese, obviously. But if you have all of those ingredients and you don't have a stove or a hot plate, you can still make a great grilled cheese sandwich as long as you have an iron. So leave in the comments down below if you know of another way to make a grilled cheese sandwich or a different kind of heating element that you think would work. We can maybe give that a try in another video. Thanks for joining. If you liked that video, you can join us again next week when we're going to upload a different kind of bad food science. If you enjoyed that, you can do all of that YouTube stuff, clicking buttons and whatnot. And I will see you guys next week. Bye.